everyone. Thanks for being with us for our weekend thoughts. If you haven't been able to be with us for the weekend message yet and weekend worship, then just stop right now, if you will, and go over and participate in our weekend worship and the weekend message, and then you can catch right back up with this weekend thoughts. But for those of you that have been part of our weekend experience, or you're just now catching back up because you stopped and went over, I am actually, if you see here, you can see this fence. Now on the other side of this fence, years ago, now let me just say, I know it doesn't look too bad right now. It's actually kind of pretty. It's really green, but it's really grown up. And when I say grown up, because on the other side of this fence, years ago, used to be the most amazing backyard, or one of the most amazing backyards in all of North Carolina. People from all over the state would come and take pictures in this backyard. There would be weddings performed in this backyard. It was an amazing. It won all kinds of awards. It was absolutely gorgeous. The turf, the grass was just so green. In fact, I used to tease my parents. I used to say, "Hey, can I just sneak over and just play some ball on that yard, just for a few moments, just to experience it?" And the work that actually went into the upkeep. I mean, there was paths going everywhere. There was fountains. There was stone benches to sit on. Beautiful trees. It was just something to behold. And right over here, actually, there's an old beat-up storage building that used to store all the tools. But now, as you can see, it's all grown up. The whole backyard, in a lot of ways, has grown up. It's over the course of time. So what happened? Well, for one, the family that was investing so much time and effort and energy, they don't live here anymore. So that passion, that love that was for this specific backyard or this neighborhood or part of this neighborhood is not experienced anymore. And over the course of time, as people haven't had that love or haven't had that desire, and let's just face it, there was a lot of work that went into the upkeep for this. A lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of effort. And the people that came after that specific family just didn't want to put the time, didn't want to put the effort, didn't want to put the energy into it. They weren't as passionate about it. They didn't see it the way, or they didn't have the vision, they didn't have the dreams, they didn't have the ideas. It really wasn't theirs, if you will. So over the course of time, bushes have grown together, trees have just spread out more, vines have grown all throughout. The yard doesn't look the way it used to. Different weeds and stuff have grown up through the grass. Building has just come apart, and trash has been thrown into it, and people just haven't taken the time or the energy. They just don't care. This past weekend, we talked about this letter that Jesus sent to in week number 3, that he sent to the church, to one of the churches, and the thing that this church was dealing with was that they were struggling with truth. Just like so often, Jesus was complimentary of the church. He built the church up, but then he said, "But I have this against you." And they were struggling with truth. They were struggling with lies. They were struggling to understand, or where they used to be so bound to truth, now they weren't. Now they wavered in their life. It's the same thing with this yard. How does that happen? How can you be so bound in truth? How can you be so, if you will, the foundation of truth, and then over the course of time you start to waver? Well, it's interesting. In week number 1 of this series, we talked about, and Jesus spoke into the church and said, you've forgotten me. I was your first love, but I'm not anymore. You remember how much you loved one another, and now you don't. It's interesting how Jesus started off these letters that he sent to these 7 churches, and saying, with the church said, you forgot your first love. It's the exact same thing for us. People down through the years just haven't cared like the family that used to live here, they did. It's not their passion. It's not their love. Over the course of time, we move farther away from our relationship with God. We move farther away from the truth. we're scarred by different things in our life, different experiences, different struggles, different pains, and they leave a scar on us. Sometimes there's still the wound that's not even scabbed over yet. There's not the scar there because the wound is still there. So therefore, it affects how we look at the promises of God. It affects how we look at truth. It affects how, when Jesus is speaking into us, it affects how we hear or how we see. So over the course of time, what has happened to this yard, same thing happens to us. Things start to grow up. Weeds start to make their way into our life. We struggle again to see. We see things more through our eyes than we see them through Jesus' eyes. We hear things more with our ears than we do with the hearing of Jesus. So therefore, over the course of time, we start to look exactly like this backyard in our spiritual lives. My challenge is for us this week is to start to weed through these weeds. My challenge for us this week, me included, is to start to trim the bushes. It is to start to do what needs to be done to get those weeds out of the grass. To do what needs to be done. And for it, a lot of times is we're just lazy. We're just lazy. For whatever reason, we just don't see the need anymore. You see, Jesus is speaking. He speaks through his word. He speaks through different messages we hear. He speaks through people. He's speaking in so many different ways. So it's not that he's not speaking. And it's not that we really don't know the truth, or even if we are struggling to figure things out, and over the course of time, as we maybe even in growing in our relationship with God, we start to see things differently, and that's okay. We see things the way we used to see them. We see them differently now, and the Spirit has spoken to us to see things differently. That's amazing, and that's part of the weeding out process. That we see things through God's eyes, through Jesus' eyes. We hear it through his ears. We start to get a new freshness to his word and allow Jesus to speak into us through his word. We actually spend time. We ask questions. It's okay to ask questions. So often, down through historically in the church, we struggle with questions to be asked. And we kind of, when people have questions, we kind of brush their questions off, or we'll say we'll get to it, or we actually will answer a question, but it's not really with truth because we really don't know the answer ourselves, but we want to look like we do. We want to look like we are all that and a little bit more, if you will, in our relationship with God. So therefore, we share something that's not true, just to close out that question. You know, it's okay to ask questions, it's okay to have questions, and maybe for you, as with the scars and just doing life, and as you start to weed out in your life and start to weed out truth, maybe some more questions rise up. It's okay to have questions, and it's also okay sometimes not to have the answer. It's okay. But asking the questions and doing the work. And when we ask the questions, then we are ready to receive the answer, or listening for the answer, or looking for the answer that Jesus speaks in so many different ways. Again, this isn't, it's pretty for our own lives and our relationship with God through Jesus Christ. Maybe for a lot of us, we look really pretty. We're really green. We look like we have grown in so many ways. But we don't look nowhere near what God wants us to look like. And for a lot of us, we know we have a lot of weeds. We have a lot of trimming that needs to be done. We have a lot of effort, a lot of work that needs to be done. So again, let me just encourage you. Here's our challenge. That this week, we're going to start weeding out. That we're going to start allowing the pruning to take place. That we're going to mow the grass in our spiritual life. That we're going to trim down the bushes. that we're going to do what needs to be done, for us to look in the truth and the beauty that Jesus has between us. That's our challenge for this week and moving forward. You guys have a great week. Talk to you later.